eyes of man, it seems there's so much we have lost. As we look down the road where all the prodigals have walked, and one by one the enemy has whispered lies and led them off as slaves. But we know that you are God, yours is the victory. We know there is more to come that we may not yet see. So with the faith you've given us, we step into the valley unafraid. Yeah, yeah. As we call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. We call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones, come alive. God of endless mercy, God of unrelenting love, rescue every daughter, bring us back the wayward sons. And by your Spirit, breathe upon them, show the world that you alone can save. You alone can save. We call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. We call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones, come alive. So breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, oh breath of God. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, oh breath of God. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, yeah, yeah. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe, oh breath of God. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe. Breathe, oh breath of God. Breathe, oh breath of God. Breathe, oh breath of God, now breathe. We call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. We call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones. We call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. We call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones, come alive, yeah. We call out to dry bones, come alive. Oh, come alive. Amen. Good morning and welcome to State Street Community Church. We're so very glad that you're here today. Special shout out to our dads. Happy Father's Day. We're glad you're spending this morning with us. Hopefully you grabbed a weekly on your way and you can check out some different events going on, and you'll hear more about our first discussion over dinner later today, which we're really excited about this Friday night. But again, we're glad you're here. We recognize the Spirit of the living God alive and well and moving in this place, in this world. So we're going to recognize that. We're going to lean into it. We're going to lift up the name of Jesus, and we invite you to join us. skill to understand what God has willed, what God has planned. I only know at His right hand stands one who is my Savior. I take Him at His word and believe Christ died to save me, this I read. And in my heart I find a need of Him to be my Savior, that He would leave His place on high and come for sinful men to die. You count it strange, so once did I, before I knew my Savior. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. Yes, living, dying, let me bring my strength, my solace from this spring, that He would live to be my King, once died to be my Savior, that He would leave His place on high and come for sinful men to die. You count it strange, so once did I, before I knew my Savior. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, my God He is, my God is always gonna be. My Savior loves, my Savior lives, my Savior's always there for me. My God He was, and He is, and He's always gonna be. I am not skilled to understand what God has willed, what God has planned. I only know at His right hand stands one who is my Savior. a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh,
you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down.
you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. You are good, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. You are good. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. 'Cause you are good, good. Oh, 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 you are good, good. Oh,
clap for that. May we own that. May we know it. God is good. You are good. Amen. You may be seated.
Hey, I want to spend just a minute talking about how grateful we are for the fathers and the grandfathers and the the stepdads and uncles and things like that in our lives that have made impact on us. And perhaps that's not the case in every situation. Some of us have been hurt deeply by men in our life, but for those that have brought life and love and kindness and compassion and demonstrating the way of love and justice to us over the years and in our lives, uh, we say Happy Father's Day. Thank you so much for being you. Thank you for showing kindness and love to your children, to your partners, and to the world around you. So happy Father's Day, and I hope you have a great day today with your families. I also want to say thank you to everyone that was at our work day yesterday. We had over 30 people show up, which is great. We got a lot of stuff done here. The back lot was prepped well, it still needs some work done, but we made a big chunk of it done yesterday. And then we got a lot done at Brighton Street as well. And it wasn't fun work. The basement, I'm pretty sure, had the bubonic plague. And poor Stephen Sawaya, if you're watching, Stephen, I'm sorry. I hope. Don't look at WebMD right now because I told him yesterday, I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure you might be dying. But I hope that's not the case. Those of you that did help, though, yesterday, whose idea was it to have the work day on the hottest day of the summer yet? That was a bad idea. But when we planned it, we didn't know the weather. So you showed up, you worked your tails off, and we got so much done. It was amazing to see what a group of people, many of you from here, but we had people that don't attend here that were helping as well, get done in a day when we work for a common vision and cause. I want to say real quick, just to give you an update on Brighton Street, we have signed a contract for the build out of that. We have a general contractor, and all of that stuff should be happening soon, like this week soon. Actually, last week, part of the roof was worked on so that the new roof can be put on very soon in the next week or two. And so the build out should be really, you'll start seeing some tangible changes there in the next weeks and months. And we're very excited about it. I found this out yesterday. I was in a meeting. I got invited to a meeting with some nonprofit leaders here in the community and governmental leaders yesterday afternoon with the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana. And they were talking about a couple different things. But one of the things I didn't know anyway was that Brighton Street is actually in what they refer to as an opportunity zone. And an opportunity zone is areas of the state, neighborhoods really, that are economically challenged. And the government has identified them as neighborhoods and areas that they want to incentivize development in. But oftentimes, they are areas that have high poverty, that have like housing situations, these kind of things. And so that area is actually part of it. Now, we aren't here, but that area is. It starts on Park Street over there. And that opportunity zone has about 6,000 people living in it. And the statistic is, according to the government, 42 or 44% of the children that live in that area, 6,000 people strong, so however many kids that is, 40% of those are in poverty. And so we have a tremendous opportunity to, in an area that the government even has acknowledged is an area that needs development, that needs a little bit of TLC, to build something that's going to have tremendous impact on children, on adults, that are struggling. Now, people ask, why are you guys doing like, why are you doing this in a way that doesn't seem that, like, great? Um, because it's not that great. And those are the areas that we need development in. Those are the areas that need hope. And if the church can't lead out in bringing hope to downtrodden communities, what are we doing, right? We shouldn't look to economic developers to do it. The church should say, listen, uh, watch us go. And so we're doing that, and you guys participated in that, and we're so honored to have partnership and commitment from you as we continue to go forward. We are in a series on emotional healthy spirituality, and we're trying to talk about things that help us as a community grow spiritually while also leveraging our emotional health. Um, I don't know about you. Now, maybe you grew up in a different time frame. But when I was a boy, I was obsessed with something. And that something is a someone. And his name is greatness. Michael Jordan. Now, my growing up, I heard stories from my uncles and my grandfather about the greatest football team that ever lived. That was the '85 Chicago Bears. And now, if you would hear these stories, you would believe that the '85 Chicago Bears could have single handedly won World War II. Yeah. Now, my kids are getting into basketball, which is a thing for me that I like because I like basketball. And so I was telling them stories about my favorite basketball team, which was the Chicago Bulls. And I was telling them about the championships that the Chicago Bulls won when I was younger in the 90s. I said I was actually not very much older than you, and I got to see the Chicago Bulls led by the incomparable Michael Jordan win 6 championships. And they weren't that impressed, and it really bothered me because I'm like, that's not one hand. That's one hand going into 2 hands. That's 6 championships. That's a lot. That's hard. And they did it. And they were amazing. And when I was a boy, I had posters up in my room, and I had a shirt. I didn't get Jordans because we didn't have that money, but I wanted them, and I just absolutely loved Michael Jordan, so much so that I wanted to be Michael Jordan. And so I would as a boy play basketball every day. And oftentimes with my brother. My brother Brandon's far more athletic than I am, and he's older than me, and so we'd play. And Brandon wasn't a compassionate brother, so if I would shoot it, he would just swat it back into my face, and then laugh. And we every morning before school, when we lived in downtown Rolling Prairie, if that's downtown, but I walked to school. I would meet my friends there who also walked to school, and we'd get there earlier and play basketball because I wanted to be Michael Jordan. Now, my best friend wanted to be Dennis Rodman. I'm not kidding. He loved Dennis Rodman. He colored his hair and everything. But I wanted, why stop at Dennis Rodman when we can dream about being Michael Jordan, right? And so um, I wanted to be Michael Jordan. And then I realized something as I was in my pursuit of being Michael Jordan is that I'm not going to be Michael Jordan. It was a hard realization. Now, one of the things, my former elementary basketball coach comes here. John Slater was my basketball coach in 5th and 6th grade. Now, John has told me that my sister had a better chance of being Michael Jordan than I did because he also coached her. But he also told me that when I was younger, he said you couldn't like run down the court without losing your breath. And he said, and I just always thought that's the oddest thing. And I said, I did too. Because I'm watching people run, and I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, you guys just don't quit. Now, later, again, like 4 or 5 years ago, we found out because I don't have working lungs, and I didn't even as a child, that was breathe. But at the time, I'm like, man, I clearly am not going to be Michael Jordan because I can't run without losing my breath. Like, not even just a little. I can't run like a length of a basketball court without losing my breath. And then I started trying to perfect my shot and realized, yeah, this isn't happening for me. I don't think I'm going to be Michael Jordan. I don't even think I'm going to be Scottie Pippen. And then, like, you scale back your expectation. I don't even think I'm going to be Tony Kukoc. And then finally, when you get to, like, I don't think I'm even going to be Bill Wennington, you're like, yeah, this isn't going to happen for me. This isn't going to happen. And I loved basketball, but it wasn't going to happen for me. I wasn't going to be Michael Jordan. So on Instagram, it is a feeding ground of motivational quotes. All right, Facebook is as well. Social media, there's no shortage of motivational quotes. One of the ones I saw this week actually says this: "All limits are self-imposed." And you read this and you're like, "Oh, well, wait a second. That's a great idea. I should think about the limits on my life, and then also think that I'm imposing those limits on my life." And it reminded me, then I immediately thought of those Michael Jordan days. I'm like, I'm not sure this is true. All limits aren't self-imposed. There are limits to our life that aren't self-imposed. There are limits. I believe that I could have practiced every day for hours. I could have dedicated myself to the sport, and I still wouldn't have been Michael Jordan. So all limits aren't self-imposed. There are limits, right? Now, this idea that we are limitless is for me motivating, because you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and lift like 600 pounds because I got no limits. And then you're like, okay, wait a second. Can we start with the dumbbell first? And we'll work up from there. This idea really appeals to me, but it's not really reality, right? It's an idea that's like permeates sports, though. Your only limit is you. Nah, I don't think so. Your only limit is not just you. There's lots of other limits in this world. And then Nike has this campaign that says accept no limits. Well, today I want to talk accepting limits. Nike might be wrong here. It's okay and good and right to accept limits, to acknowledge limits, to enter into a life that sees limits as not always a bad thing. See, we all have limits. We all have limits. We all seem to struggle with the idea that we all have limits. We do. You and I have limits. We have limits to our life. We have limits to our abilities. We have limits to our income. We have limits to our time. We have all these limits. Limits exist. We all have limits. And we all seem to struggle with living within our limits. Plath wrote about the tension of acknowledging that we have limits, right? So she writes this, and I kind of resonate. She says, "I can never read all the books I want." Does anybody else feel that? Like, there's so many more books that you want to read that you just don't have time for. Daughter's the same way. She can't read all the books that she has. She wants to read more books. She reads more books than anybody I know, but there's more books. She says, "I can never be all the people I want and live all the lives that I want. I can never train myself in all the skills I want. And why do I want? I want to live and feel all the shades, tones, and variations of mental and physical experience possible in my life. And I am horribly limited. That's a very vulnerable and honest and true statement. We are all limited. Uh, I still struggle with the idea that when I grow up, I want to be this thing, right? And I look in the mirror and I see lots of gray hair. I'm like, Nate, you're growing up. All these other like things, you either better start doing them, or you're going to be limited by time. There's not a job that I don't see that I don't want to try. I literally, there's nothing I see that I think I want to do that, right? Like whether it's like a coffee shop broista, I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. I would love to do that. Or I look and I'm seeing these great like even so I toured. I've been able to tour through my friends American Licorice, and they get to make candy. I'm like, I want to be Wonka. That sounds fun. Nobody that works there, I mean, like nobody thinks that they're Wonka, but I want to be Wonka. So I'd like to try that. I'd like to see what that's like. I look at ideas and jobs, and always I think, oh, that sounds fun. I would love to try. I'm working. I don't know why, but every time I go to the movie theater, I'm like, this. Eat popcorn and watch. So, but we're limited. You can't do everything. You don't know how to do everything. There's not time to learn how to do everything. I want to. So my friend and stage reader Rob Walker, he welds. That sounds fun. I don't know how to weld. Now I can learn how to weld, but I don't know why I would. There's nothing. There's never literally been a moment in my life where I'm like, oh, man, if I knew how to weld, I wouldn't have this problem. But I want to weld. Why? Because it sounds awesome. But I don't have time. There's limits. We're limited. We're limited by our size, right? There are people that, so I hear Pastor Becky comes to me and I say, hey, I see that we ordered a stool. Why did we order a stool? Because we just ordered a stool. Do we need 2 stools? And she says, yeah, actually, we do. The people in the coffee shop can't reach the shelves. I'm not saying they're limited, but they're limited by their size. And I said, well, I get the stuff at the top shelves for them. And they said, well, what happens when you're not there? I don't know. Well, they needed a stool to be able to get that stuff. But that's what I do. Are you trying to work me out of here? That's my job here, to get things off of tall shelves. I have no job security if I don't do those things. Some people are limited by size. They're not tall, or they're too tall, and they're not. I ride in some car. Oh, this is great. So I was going to an event last Sunday. By the way, this story is going to make me seem way more important than I am. Not important at all, because I talked to you about meeting a lieutenant governor yesterday. But I went to a small meeting with Joe Donnelly. And we're riding over to Maryville. And I know I get sick in cars. I do. If I don't drive, I get sick. And I didn't tell first service this, so this is just a second service story. So I knew my limitations, but I was riding in the car, and I got there last, so I had to sit in back. And it was a very nice car. And so we're there, and I'm sick. I am sick on the ride. I mean, I'm quiet in the back. I am sweating so bad, profusely. And I'm like, what is Joe Donnelly going to think? Like, old sweaty Baptist pastor here. But at that point, I don't care, because I don't care about Joe Donnelly. I'm going to throw up. I kid you not. So we're in the car. And I've Google mapped it. I'm not navigating this, but I got to know how long until we're there, because this ride is taking forever. And we pull onto the road, and it comes up. You swallow that, Loucks. You will swallow that. You will swallow. You are going to meet a sitting senator of the United States. You will swallow that, and you will be happy doing it. And so I swallowed it. I had limitations, but I didn't acknowledge them. And so there are the entrances, and we just drove by it, sweating, vomit in my mouth, swallowed, acidic-y, gross. I just won't go home. We turn around. I get sicker. I'm like, okay, it's a mile. We got a mile. We got a mile. Loucks, make it. Pull from within. You can make it. If you get there, you're going to be living your best life ever. You're meeting a senator. And I get there, and it comes. We're in distance. I mean, we are right there by the entrance. I can't tell them I'm throwing up. Why can't I tell them? It's in my mouth. So, by the way, this is why I don't get invited to important things. If you ever wonder why invitations don't happen again with me, and so I'm like, I can't snap fast enough, and they look in their mirror like, oh, hold on, pull it aside, and there it goes. I'm like, I'll just walk. Nope, get in the car. We get there, and it was awful. It was awful. I mean, I pulled it together. I mean, I didn't stop sweating, but I did pull it together. But I knew if I sit in the back of that car for 50 minutes, I'm gonna get sick. I knew it. I knew I would, and I did. But I thought, well, it's rude to ask to sit in the front because, the person sitting in the front was a woman, and I don't want to, get in the back, woman. Let me, white man you. I wanted to be like a child of 2018. I wanted to be kind, hashtag me too. So I'm like, I will sit in the back and suffer through this because I want to be kind. I want to be a part of the team. I knew my limits and I overrid them. And I suffered. We all have limits. We all have limits. Some of us are size, some of us are geography, some of us have time limits. You only have 24 hours a day. You do. You only have 24 hours a day, which means you can only fill up your time with so many things. I've had to learn how to say no because I'm not good at saying no. People ask, hey, do you want to help with this? Why? Because I do want to help with that. I do. I want to help. And they're like, hey, we'd love to have your opinion on this thing. Can you meet at this meeting? Yeah, you want my opinion? Okay, I'll be whatever meeting there is. I don't have a good opinion, but I'm not going to tell you that because you asked me, so I'm going to be there. I want to help. I only have so much time. You only have so much time. Language is remarkably limiting. Okay, I need a volunteer. Who am I going to pick? Okay, James Conlon, back there. Okay, James, let's do a thought experiment here. Let's say someone that we know is blind, never seen in their life, never had any sight. Explain to them the color red. Explain to them the difference between the color red and the color green. Okay, then, I'll give you an easier one. Let's say we have another friend that is completely deaf. Explain to them the sound of the ocean. Language is limiting, right? I've been thinking about this week. trying to figure out how to define red. I don't know how. I YouTubed it because that's where I go for things. It's my authority. And there's all these kind of videos of people trying to explain red, and they're like, yeah, we don't know how. Because language is limiting, right? Red is a construct. We all agree, well, those of us that aren't colorblind, all agree that there is a thing that is red, and it's that thing. But how do you describe it? I don't know. It's that thing. I just see it. I conceptualize it, but I don't know how to verbalize it. Language is limiting. This happens also often in communicating across various different languages. My wife and her family will be laughing about something, and I'm there. I'm like, what you guys talking about? I don't speak Romanian, and almost always. Oh yeah, it just doesn't translate into English well. How about we try? I like jokes. And, it is limited. My wife will often say there's not really a good American or English kind of equivalent to this word. This happens, by the way, this is a very, very common problem in biblical interpretation. We have words in Greek and Hebrew that is very hard to translate into English. Because sometimes there's just not a direct word that coordinates with that. And so you try to explain it, but it's not fully. This is why new translations often, because language changes, meaning changes, so they have to correct words and change words because the word that we had there isn't necessarily the best word to understand this Greek or Hebrew word or concept. So we try to, it's kind of like this, but not really like this. And we try to understand. We're limited by language. We are limited by language. Language limits us. Your raw materials limit you, right? You have a certain personality. And that personality might have been informed by your experiences or by your DNA or these kind of things, but you do have a certain personality. The worst thing when I see politicians trying to be funny, you're like, okay, you didn't get to where you're at because you're funny. You're trying, and I appreciate the effort, but let's just cut the jokes out. We're all only laughing because we're afraid of your power. Like, so this is, you're super smart, though. So talk about, like, you're a policy wonk. Talk about that, because that's what you're good at. You don't have to be funny. That's not your personality. Limitations, right? Some people, as my friend Joe Fratina says, some people are really, 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 really good at basketball, but then they try baseball. And they're not so good. Hashtag MJ. Our raw materials might limit us as well. Our life journeys limit us, right? You have things that have happened in your life through no faults of your own that have given you limitations, whether it's like a lung issue that they took out or an autoimmune disease, it's a limitation, or it's a mental emotional health struggle, it's a limitation. Maybe it's somebody died in your life and now you are limited because of that. There are limitations there that you live with. And what is a limit? It's just an endpoint which can't be overridden, or maybe shouldn't be overridden. That's a limit. I knew what my limits were when I entered into that car, yet I got in there. And I overrode those limits, and I suffered because of them. Limits. Limits are endpoints which can't be overridden. Think about this, Adam and Eve. So the way our ancestors tell our story is that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he creates out of this love and concern and care and compassion, and he calls his creation good, and he gives them an identity, he gives them a name, he gives them a vocation, he gives them a place, because God is a caring God. God is a providing God, and God gives them this stuff. But he says, I want you limited by one thing. Do not eat of this certain tree. That's all. The rest of it you get to do. You can like walk around. You can have fun. You can be fruitful and multiply, whatever that means. You can do all that stuff, whatever you want. Don't eat of this thing. It's one limit there. One endpoint which couldn't be overridden. And what happened? We have a hard time understanding our limits. Humanity overrode the limit. And because of that, chaos, disunity, disruption. Once an identity, there no longer was an identity. Where there was once a location, a specific location, no longer had that location. They were kicked out of that location. What was once a people is no longer a people. Because humanity, we push the limits. And sometimes it's out of fear that if we don't, then we won't have or we won't know. And so we're afraid that if we don't continue to push this limit, then we won't have this experience or we won't have this thing that we're trying to acquire. And if we don't have that thing, or if we don't push the limits of our time, then our kids won't get this experience. And then all their friends will have that experience. And what if our kids go to class and they get talked down to or get made fun of because they didn't get to do that one thing that everybody else got to do? And we live with these fears that what if we're causing harm if we don't push past these limits? Or maybe there's a desire for this curiosity. I understand I shouldn't, but you know what? I want to see what happens. Maybe it's out of pressure. You know that you only have so much time. You know that the people around you have been asking to have more of your time, but your boss asked you to work more and you're afraid to say no. Or maybe your spouse is telling you, you got to work more so that we can do these things. And you're tired. You're cynical. It's dark and toxic for you, but you can't say no. See, God invites us into a humanity that embraces limits. That it's okay to have limits. It's good to have limits. We are created to live within limits. Right? Think about this. So God creates in 6 days, and then on the seventh day, he rests. He creates, and he conquers, and he accomplishes. He's creative. He does. He builds. And then on one day, he says, I'm no longer going to do that. I'm going to rest. He limits our time and says, I want you to do the same thing. Not that you couldn't for 7 days or 14 days or 21 days or 28 days or, for months and months and months and months work. You could be an animal. You could be a machine. But I'm telling you, that's not how I want you to thrive in your humanity. I want you to embrace the limits of time and say, I submit to that limit. I will work and I will rest. Why? Because God says it's good to do that. God limits our time. He limits our accumulation. Right? This idea of the Old Testament tithes. That God invites his people to give out of their wealth and their stuff, right? Because their currency was often, kind of like a type of currency. So, but hey, you can accumulate and you can accumulate and you can accumulate and you can start thinking that everything in this world is yours to own, yours to use, yours to manipulate. You can start thinking that I want you to give back so that you can understand that you've accumulated enough. It's enough. What you are and what you have and what you've done is enough. This idea of gleaning is a limit, right? Maybe you've heard of it. In the Old Testament, again, so people that had money would often have fields or something that they're trying to grow things with, either so that they can consume themselves with their own families and tribes and stuff like that, or sell as well. But this idea of gleaning is, hey, you're going to have this big field. You're going to have this big space that you're gonna earn off of. You're going to reap the benefits of this land, by the way, that God owns, but you're going to use it. And God says, I'm going to limit your profit. Which is offensive to us, right? Wait a second. I said, no. Yeah, you could use your land for more. You can actually make more money. I'm going to limit that. Why? Why am I going to do that? Because the way humanity thrives is within limits. So when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You could, and you could sell those things, and you could accumulate those things. You could acquire those things, but I want you to do that. You're going to limit yourself to that. You're going to have to confront your own greed because you're going to want to, but you're going to confront your own greed there. And I want you to leave them there. I want you to limit your own greed. I want you to limit your own possessions. You're going to leave them there because for humanity to thrive, you have to confront that within you and limit yourself so that the poor and the immigrant have something to eat. And this isn't a suggestion because God says, I am the Lord your God. So he's saying, you better listen. This isn't just an idea. I'm not just suggesting it. I'm telling you, live within this limit. Right? And so when later, this is obviously in Leviticus, this is Torah, but later in the prophetic literature, when God gets mad at Israel, why does he get really mad? Because they don't live within their limits. He says, you exploit the poor. You're not a good neighbor to the immigrants. You're not helping those who are different. You're not living within the limits I've set for you of neighborliness. I'm just going to let you be taken over by Babylon. One of my favorite John the Baptist texts is his acknowledgement of limits. So think about this. Jesus is John the Baptist, and John the Baptist, his primary job is to proclaim the Messiah is coming and to set the tone for this and to baptize Jesus, all these things. But John the Baptist, as kind of eclectic as he is, has earned himself his own following, and he's got people following him. And eventually, though, he kind of passes the baton off to Jesus, and he says this. Now, a discussion about purification arose in John's disciples, who came to John and said to him, Rabbi, the one who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you testified, here he is baptizing, and all are going to him. Hey, everyone's going to Jesus now, John. Answer, no one can receive anything except what has been given from heaven. You yourselves are my witnesses that I said, I am not the Messiah, but I have been sent ahead of him. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom, which is John, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. For this reason, my joy has been fulfilled. So John understands his limits. What is his job? To decrease so that Jesus can increase. Everything in him. He's got people saying, no, don't do that. Don't live to those limits. Just says, no. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm called to. See, limitations are the most powerful tool in applying focus and allowing personal growth. How many here have been distracted by the internet before? You went online and you wanted to do this thing or you wanted to accomplish this thing and you've got 6 hours to get this one thing done, and then you just sucked up all your time looking at Facebook posts and getting upset. How dare Nick Minnick post that thing on his Facebook? I'm going to write a response to him. I'm going to correct him. How dare he? And then I delete it. I don't want to be confrontational. I like instead of being aggressive, I like the passive aggressive part of that. So I'm just gonna be mad at you when I see it. But limitations, right? I've learned in the morning time when I get going in work, I've got to limit my contact with email, with all these things if I want to get something done because it helps me focus. It allows personal growth when I limit myself to intaking things. When we have limited resources, we have limited time, we have limited space, we have limited things, so we have to acknowledge our limits so that we can focus on the things that matter the most. Sometimes we have to turn off the TV. Sometimes we have to turn off the Facebook. So as we go out today and as we kind of think about these things, just a couple of things that I want us to wrestle with as we think about our own spiritual development, acknowledging limitations, is first is acknowledge that we don't have limits. We have limits. It's okay. It might be physical limits. It might be emotional limits. It's time limits. We all have time limits. Acknowledge that we all have limits and that we all don't live within our limits well. And maybe our frustration right now and our stress right now and our anxiety is because we haven't been living within our limits. And sometimes God invites us to wrestle with that idea of what are good limits for us. That's the great thing, is you don't have to know all of those things, because God invites you to process all of those things with him. Your emotions and your thoughts, process them. Hey, God, I'm anxious right now. I'm not in a good place. I'm cynical. I'm mean. I'm aggressive. Help me understand where I'm pushing past the limits of my life. Maybe my marriage isn't great because I'm not living within the limits of my life well. Maybe, I've consumed enough for me, and I need to share with the people that I care about. Also, strive to recognize when your limitations are met. Hey, I'm at the end. I'm okay. I've pushed past this point. I've got to come back. And finally, within your limits. Okay, to acknowledge your limits. I had to learn that I'm not going to be a world-class philosopher or theologian. It's just not me. There are ideas that I read, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I know like 7 words. It's okay. It's just not me. I've got other gifts. I've got other skills. I've got other things that I'm okay at. Some good things I'm good at. Some things I'm really bad at. But I'm learning to grow within those limits. Learning to cultivate the life that God has given me, and to embrace that there are limits. And embracing that narrative and that story of my life to say, yeah, I'm not the best at this and this and this. Now, that doesn't mean like that gives you an out in compassion. Yeah, I'm not good at compassion, so I don't show it. No. That's that fruit of the Spirit is the life and culmination of a life of faith. But there are other things that we're just maybe not good at. I'll never be a great basketball player. That's okay. I know that I can only work a certain amount of time before it impacts my family. There are days that I need to pull back. Even though I want to accomplish and build the whole world in a day, I've got to come back a little bit from that. And often I push past that limit and I suffer for it. So learn to grow within your limits. You only have so much time. You only have so much energy. You can only have so many relationships. Thrive within that. Embrace that story. So we're going to enter into a time of Eucharist where we give thanks for the good and gracious gift. So we invite you to the table. And we, as people of faith, who are embodying a just and generous expression of the Christian faith, we use this time to reflect and contemplate the areas of our life where we chose the path of hate over love, where we chose the path of judgment over mercy, where we chose our way over the ways of Jesus. And we are invited to the tables by Christ and met there with grace. So will you pray with me? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this our daily bread. Our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. The tables of Christ are open.
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended in whole, empty-handed, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Yeah. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like yourself down, raising up the broken to life. You take our failures. You take our failures. You take our weakness. You set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord. I'll be your vessel. The world to see your life in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. I can sing it now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. I can see now. I can see the love in your eyes. Yourself down, raising up the broken to life. I can see now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life.
Amen. Will you please stand with us before we dismiss? I do want to congratulate the Minnix on your 10-year wedding anniversary. Congratulations. I don't know if it was recently, right? You guys just got back. Hey, this coming Friday, please put it on your calendar to be here for our first discussion over dinner. We are going to have dinner and a conversation about child advocacy. You are invited. Your friends are invited. We would love, though, if you could help us out with this, to go on Facebook and just to confirm that you're coming so we know about how many people to expect. We don't know if there's going to be 30 of us or 100. But we would love to have any participation that way as you can. Just let us know through Facebook that you're going to be there. Hey, this week and every week, we are so grateful that you're with us. Happy Father's Day. And we hope that you know that you are loved deeply, not only by us, but even more so by the God of this universe. So go out today in the love of the Father, in the peace of his Son, Jesus Christ, and in the movement of the Holy Spirit. You are dismissed. Peace be with you.